Let's stop pretending Sergeant Reed is the victim here. The sentence landed in the case review room like a dropped badge, sharp enough to make every officer at the table go still, quiet enough to leave no excuse for anyone to say they had not heard it. Lieutenant Brian Keller stood at the front of the room with one hand resting beside the projector remote, his pale blue shirt pressed flat beneath his dark uniform jacket, his face wearing the practiced confidence of a man who had spent too many years being believed before he was questioned. On the screen behind him, a frozen bodycam frame showed rain sliding across the windshield of a patrol cruiser on Jefferson Street, the red and blue lights reflecting off wet pavement, the image blurred just enough to hide what mattered. At the far end of the table sat Sergeant Marcus Reed, the only black officer in the room, his posture straight, his hands folded over a plain manila folder, his expression calm in a way that seemed to irritate Keller more than any argument could have. Marcus did not look defeated. He did not look angry. He looked like a man listening carefully while someone built a wall, brick by brick, not realizing the foundation had already cracked. Captain Elaine Brooks sat near the center of the table, her reading glasses low on her nose, a stack of incident reports open in front of her. To her right, Officer Daniel Price kept his eyes on his coffee cup as if the answer to his conscience might be floating somewhere in the dark liquid. Beside the media station, Nina Patel, the department's video technician, watched the bodycam timeline with a slight frown, her fingers resting near the keyboard but not moving yet. The room smelled like burnt coffee, printer ink, and old carpet warmed by fluorescent lights. It was not a courtroom, but it felt like one. No judge, no jury, just uniforms, silence, and one man trying to turn a review into a public humiliation. Keller clicked the remote, and the video moved forward a few seconds. "What you're about to see," he said, glancing briefly at Marcus, "is what happens when an officer lets personal feelings interfere with procedure." A few chairs shifted. Nobody spoke. Marcus looked at the screen, not at Keller. 3 nights earlier, on that same rain-soaked street, Mrs. Gloria Watkins, a 62-year-old hospital nurse, had been pulled over after a vague radio call about a stolen vehicle that did not match her plates, her registration, or the calm way she held her license out the window. Marcus had been there. Keller had been there. And the truth had been there too, standing in the rain, waiting to see who would protect it. But truth, Marcus had learned, did not always arrive with thunder. Sometimes it arrived in a small USB drive resting inside a jacket pocket. Sometimes it waded through insults. Sometimes it let arrogance speak first. Keller turned back to the room and gave a short, humorless laugh. "Sergeant Reed wants everyone to believe this is about bias," he said. "But what this is really about is judgment. Poor judgment." The word hung there. Poor. It was not just an evaluation. It was a verdict. Marcus felt the eyes move toward him, some curious, some uncomfortable, some already deciding which side was safer. He had seen that look before in locker rooms, patrol briefings, promotion boards, and traffic stops where citizens were expected to prove they belonged in their own lives. He took one slow breath. He could hear the faint buzz of the lights overhead. He could hear rain tapping against the narrow window behind him. He could hear Keller preparing to say more, to push harder, to mistake Marcus's silence for weakness. Then Keller leaned forward, his voice lowering into something colder. "Some officers," he said, "forget that wearing the uniform does not make them special." For the first time, Marcus lifted his eyes from the screen and looked directly at him. The room seemed to tighten around that stare. Marcus did not raise his voice. He did not defend himself. He simply slid the manila folder an inch forward with 2 fingers and said, "You're right, Lieutenant. The uniform doesn't make anyone special. The truth does." Marcus did not need to explain what he meant, not yet, and that restraint unsettled the room more than a speech would have. Captain Elaine Brooks glanced from him to Keller, then down at the folder. Marcus had moved forward, but she did not touch it. She had led enough case reviews to know when a room was following procedure and when a room was pretending to. This one was pretending. The incident on Jefferson Street had arrived on her desk marked as a routine conduct concern, a disagreement between officers during a late-night traffic stop. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that should have required every supervisor from the East Precinct to sit around a conference table before 8 in the morning. But when she read Keller's report, something about it felt too polished, too clean, like a floor mopped before anyone could see the footprints. He claimed the stop began at 10:42 p.m. after a dispatch alert described a dark sedan possibly connected to a stolen vehicle complaint. He claimed Mrs. Gloria Watkins failed to comply with verbal instructions. He claimed Sergeant Reed interfered by questioning his commands in front of a civilian. And finally, he claimed the missing section of body camera footage was caused by rain interfering with the unit. Each sentence sounded official. Each sentence carried the weight of department language. But official language could hide a lie the same way a uniform could hide fear. Marcus remembered that night with a clarity that made Keller's report feel almost insulting. The rain had been steady but not severe, the kind that turned streetlights into soft yellow halos and made the asphalt shine like black glass. Mrs. Watkins had pulled over within half a block, used her turn signal, placed both hands on the steering wheel, and waited. Her car was a navy blue 2014 Toyota Camry, not a black Dodge Charger as dispatch had described. Her license plate was clean. Her registration matched her name. Her hospital identification badge hung from the rearview mirror beside a small silver cross and a faded parking permit from St. Agnes Medical Center. Marcus had seen all of it before Keller finished his first approach. He had also seen Keller's jaw tighten the moment Mrs. Watkins asked, politely, why she had been stopped. Not loudly, not disrespectfully, just like a citizen asking a question in a country where questions were supposed to be. Aloud. Keller did not like that. He stepped closer to her window and told her to stop talking. Marcus had moved beside him and kept his voice low, careful not to embarrass him, careful not to make the situation worse. Lieutenant, the registration is clear, he had said. Keller did not look at him. I did not ask for commentary. That was the first crack. Not the worst one. Just the first. In the review room, Keller played the first available clip again. The footage showed rain, lights, Mrs. Watkins's hands on the wheel, Marcus standing a few feet back, calm and alert. Then the timeline skipped. 47 seconds disappeared, as if someone had reached into the night and cut out its heart. When the video resumed, Keller was already writing notes. Mrs. Watkins was sitting silently in her car, and Marcus was looking toward the storefront across the street. Nina Patel leaned closer to her monitor. Her eyes narrowed, not dramatically, not enough for most people to notice, but Marcus noticed. She saw the gap. She saw the numbers jump. Keller cleared his throat before anyone could ask about it. As you can see, he said, the important portion is intact. Marcus finally turned his head slightly. Is it? The question was quiet. Too quiet for Keller's comfort. Officer Daniel Price shifted in his chair, and the paper cup in front of him gave a soft little crack under his hand. Captain Brooks heard it. So did Marcus. Keller smiled like a man trying to keep a door closed while wind pushed from the other side. Unless you are accusing the department system of lying, Sergeant. Marcus looked back at the frozen screen, where the missing 47 seconds sat invisible but heavy. No, he said. I am saying systems do not lie by themselves. People use them to. The words moved through the room slowly, not because they were hard to understand, but because everyone understood them too well. Systems do not lie by themselves. People use them to. Captain Brooks removed her glasses and placed them on top of the open report. She did not look angry yet. She looked careful, which in that room was more dangerous. Lieutenant Keller straightened his shoulders, his smile thinning at the corners. That is a serious accusation, he said. Marcus nodded once. It is a serious gap. Nina Patel tapped 2 keys, and the video timeline expanded across the lower edge of the screen. The numbers sharpened. 10:46 and 13 seconds p.m. Then, suddenly, 10:47 p.m. 47 seconds gone. Not static. Not weather distortion. Gone. The kind of absence that felt shaped by a hand. Officer Daniel Price stared at the screen, his face pale beneath the harsh lights, and Marcus could see the battle happening behind his eyes. Price had been on the sidewalk that night, young enough to still believe bad moments could be survived by staying quiet, old enough to know silence was a choice. Marcus did not hate him for being afraid. Fear was human, but fear with a badge became something else if it was allowed to drive. Keller turned toward Nina before Brooks could speak. We already covered this in the preliminary review. Rain, signal disruption, routine equipment malfunction. Nina did not look away from the screen. Body cameras do not usually skip forward with a clean time jump during rain, she said. Her voice was professional, almost soft. Weather can blur video. It can affect audio. It does not normally erase an exact segment and resume without corrupted frames. The room shifted again. A few officers exchanged quick glances, the kind people make when they realize the safe answer may not be safe anymore. Keller gave a short laugh. With respect, Miss Patel, officers in the field understand field conditions better than people behind computers. It was meant to shrink her. Everyone heard it. Nina's fingers paused above the keyboard, but her expression did not change. Marcus watched her take the insult, fold it away, and return to the facts. With respect, Lieutenant, metadata does not care where anyone is standing. Captain Brooks raised one hand, not to silence Nina, but to stop Keller from speaking over her. Continue. Keller's jaw tightened. For the first time that morning, control slipped visibly from his face. Marcus saw it and remembered something his grandfather used to tell him when he was a boy in Georgia. Never confuse volume with strength. The loudest man in the room is often trying to drown out what he fears. Marcus had carried that lesson through 16 years in uniform, through winter patrols, domestic calls, school visits, traffic stops, promotion interviews, and quiet evenings when he sat alone in his car after a shift, wondering why dignity sometimes had to be defended like evidence. He had not joined the department to become a symbol. He had joined because his mother once waited 40 minutes for help after a break-in, and when officers finally arrived, one of them spoke to her like the fear in her voice was an inconvenience. Marcus was 12 years old then, standing in the hallway in his socks, watching his mother hold herself together in front of men who never apologized. That night taught him two things. People remember how power speaks to them, and a badge only means something if the person wearing it remembers who it is supposed to serve. In the review room, Keller clicked the remote again, forcing the video forward as if motion could bury suspicion. "Let us not turn a simple disagreement into a lecture," he said. Sergeant Reed has a history of inserting personal interpretation into routine police work. Marcus felt the familiar sting, not from the words themselves, but from the shape of them. Personal interpretation. Too emotional. Too sensitive. Too difficult. The language changed from decade to decade, but the message stayed dressed in the same old coat. You are allowed in the room, as long as you do not question how the room works. Marcus opened the manila folder. Inside were printed still frames, timestamps, a preservation request, and a single handwritten note from Mrs. Gloria Watkins. He did not read it yet. He only rested his palm over the page. "Captain," he said, his voice even, "before Lieutenant Keller continues describing my judgment, I would like the room to look at what happened before the missing 47 seconds." Keller turned sharply. "We already saw that." Marcus looked at the screen, then at Brooks. "No," he said. "We saw what survived the cut." Captain Brooks did not answer immediately, and that silence was the first honest thing that had happened in the room all morning. She leaned back in her chair, studied Marcus for a long second, then looked toward Nina Patel. "Rewind to the beginning of the stop," she said. Keller's head turned fast. "Captain, with respect, that is unnecessary. The issue under review is Sergeant Reed's conduct after the stop escalated." Brooks did not look at him. "Then we should understand how it escalated." Nina moved the cursor back to 10:42 and 18 seconds p.m., and the room watched the wet street appear again, clearer now because everyone was searching the frame instead of accepting it. The cruiser rolled to a stop behind Mrs. Watkins's Camry. Rain softened the edges of everything, but not enough to hide the facts. The Camry's right turn signal blinked. The brake lights glowed steady. The vehicle pulled close to the curb, almost perfectly aligned, less than 6 inches from the gutter. No sudden movement. No argument. No chase. No threat. Just a woman on her way home after a 12-hour hospital shift, stopping because red and blue lights told her to. Marcus remembered the smell of rain on warm pavement that night, the faint scent of disinfectant that drifted from Mrs. Watkins's blue scrubs when she lowered her window, the tired patience in her eyes. She had not looked surprised to be questioned. That was what stayed with him. Not fear. Not confusion. A tired kind of preparation, as if life had already taught her that being innocent did not always make a moment safe. On the screen, Keller approached the driver's side before Marcus could finish checking the plate. His shoulders were squared, his flashlight angled too high, his voice loud enough for the body camera to catch every word. "License and registration." Mrs. Watkins complied. Her hands moved slowly, carefully. Respectfully, "Officer, may I ask why I was stopped?" she said. Her voice was calm, with a slight rasp from exhaustion. Keller paused, and even on video, the pause felt loaded. "Because I stopped you." Around the table, no one moved. Not even the officers who had spent years learning how to hide discomfort behind blank faces. Nina let the clip continue. Marcus appeared in the frame from the passenger side, stepping into view. "Lieutenant," his recorded voice said, low and controlled. Dispatch gave a different make and partial plate. "This registration is clear." Keller did not turn toward him. "Stand back, Reed." Mrs. Watkins looked from one officer to the other. "I have my hospital badge right there. I am just coming from St. Agnes." "Nobody asked for your story," Keller said. It was not shouted. That made it worse. It was casual, practiced, the kind of disrespect that had been used so often it no longer sounded like effort. Captain Brooks's face changed slightly. Not much. Just enough. Marcus saw her glance down at Keller's written report, where the words driver became argumentative sat neatly in black ink. On the screen, Mrs. Watkins did not become argumentative. She became smaller. Her shoulders lowered. Her hands returned to the steering wheel. Marcus remembered wanting to say more, wanting to step in harder, but knowing that two officers challenging each other in front of a civilian could turn confusion into danger. So he chose precision. "Lieutenant, we should verify the original call before continuing." Keller finally looked back at him. The rain ran down the brim of his cap, but his expression was sharp and dry. "You questioning me now?" In the conference room, Keller shifted his weight. "Pause it," he said. Nobody did. Nina looked at Brooks. Brooks gave a small shake of her head. The video continued. Keller leaned slightly toward Marcus, and his voice dropped, but the microphone still caught enough. "Do not perform for her." That sentence made Officer Daniel Price close his eyes for half a second. Marcus noticed. Captain Brooks noticed too. On screen, Marcus said nothing. He looked toward the storefront across the street, toward a small green awning with white letters that read Watkins Pharmacy, though nobody in the room had cared about that detail until now. The pharmacy lights were off, but a security camera under the awning pointed directly at the curb. Marcus had seen it that night. Keller had not. Or maybe he had, and thought it did not matter. Then the body camera frame shook slightly as Keller's hand moved near his chest. Nina slowed the playback without being asked. The image did not show everything, but in the reflection of Mrs. Watkins's driver's side window, a small red recording light flickered once, then vanished. The screen jumped forward. 47 seconds disappeared again. This time, the absence did not feel technical. It felt intentional. Marcus looked at Keller, then at the others. "That," he said softly, "is where the truth was supposed to go missing." The room did not breathe for a moment. Even the rain against the window seemed to soften, as if the building itself had leaned closer to the screen. Lieutenant Keller looked at the frozen frame, then at Marcus, and for the first time that morning his confidence did not arrive on time. "That is speculation," he said, but the words came out flatter than before, thinner, like paper held over a flame. Marcus did not answer him. He looked at Captain Brooks because this was no longer about winning an argument. It was about whether the room would protect the truth once it finally had a chance to stand in front of them. Brooks folded her hands on the table. "Miss Patel, can you confirm whether the camera was manually disabled?" Nina zoomed in on the reflection in the driver's side window. It was not perfect. Reflections never were. Rainwater bent the light, and the glass carried the red and blue flash of the cruiser. But there it was, small and unmistakable, Keller's right hand moving toward his chest camera. A brief shadow, a button press, a blink of red, then nothing. Nina watched it twice before speaking. "I cannot give a final technical conclusion from the reflection alone," she said carefully, "but I can say the timing matches the recording gap exactly." Keller stepped forward. "That is not proof." "No," Marcus said. "It is a door." Keller turned on him with a sharp look. "You enjoy this, do you not?" Marcus lifted his eyes. Keller's voice rose, not into a shout, but into that polished command voice some men used when they wanted anger to sound like authority. "You sit there acting noble, acting patient, while you turn one bad weather recording into some kind of personal crusade." He pointed toward the screen. "This is what I mean, Captain. Sergeant Reed does not review facts. He searches for offense. He sees race in every correction, every order, every disagreement." The words were meant for Marcus, but they were aimed at the room. Keller wanted allies. He wanted old habits to wake up. He wanted the other officers to remember how easy it was to label a black man as difficult before asking why he had to be so careful. Marcus felt the heat behind his ribs, the old familiar burn of being asked to prove not only what happened, but why he had the right to care. Imagine standing there, wearing the same badge as everyone else, following the same rules, carrying the same responsibility, yet still being told that your concern for fairness is not professionalism, it is attitude. Imagine knowing the truth, holding the evidence, and still having to speak gently so the people who doubted you would not call your dignity aggression. Marcus had lived that balance for years. He had learned to lower his voice when others raised theirs. He had learned to document what others could simply say. He had learned that in some rooms, being right was not enough. You had to be undeniable. Captain Brooks looked at Keller. "Lieutenant, choose your words carefully." Keller gave a tight smile. "I am choosing them very carefully. People like Reed always know how to make the department look guilty before the facts are in." Officer Daniel Price's head lifted. It was quick, almost involuntary, but everyone near him saw it. People like Reed. The phrase had landed exactly where Keller pretended it had not. Nina's fingers stilled above the keyboard. Brooks's face hardened by one small degree. Marcus let the silence expose the sentence. He did not interrupt it. He did not rescue Keller from it. He simply opened the manila folder and removed the first page. "This is the preservation request I filed at 11:18 that night," he said. "This is the dispatch transcript. This is the plate verification. And this," he placed Mrs. Watkins's handwritten note on top, "is the statement the report says she refused to give." Brooks reached for the page at last. Keller's eyes flicked to it, then away. Marcus continued, steady as a clock. "She did not refuse. She wrote it while sitting in her car, in the rain, after being told her voice did not matter." The room was quiet enough to hear the paper slide beneath Brooks's fingertips. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket, touched the small USB drive, and left it there for one more second. Truth did not need to rush. Not when the lie was still speaking. Captain Brooks read Mrs. Watkins's statement without moving her eyes away from the page, and with every line, the air in the room seemed to lose another degree of warmth. The statement was simple. That was what made it powerful. It did not sound rehearsed. It did not sound dramatic. It sounded like a tired woman telling the truth after a long shift, writing with hands that had spent 12 hours helping patients breathe easier, stand steadier, and feel less alone. She wrote that she had obeyed every instruction. She wrote that she had provided her license, registration, insurance card, and hospital identification. She wrote that Sergeant Reed had remained calm and respectful. She wrote that Lieutenant Keller had ignored the cleared registration and continued treating her as if innocence was something she had to earn one sentence at a time. Brooks finished reading and placed the page down slowly. "This statement was not included in the packet I received," she said. Keller responded too quickly. "Because it was not relevant to the conduct review." Marcus looked at him. A civilian statement about the conduct being reviewed was not relevant. Keller's eyes narrowed. "Do not twist my words. I am reading your process." That sentence struck harder than Marcus intended, or maybe exactly as hard as it needed to. Keller took one step toward the table, then stopped himself, remembering where he was, remembering who was watching. "Captain, this is becoming a performance," he said. "Sergeant Reed has been waiting for this room to turn against me from the beginning." Marcus almost smiled, not because anything was funny, but because the lie had finally begun to reveal its shape. Keller was no longer defending the report. He was defending the version of himself the report was supposed to protect. Brooks turned to Officer Price. "Officer Price, you were present after the stop." Began. Price swallowed. His hand moved toward his cup again, then pulled back. "Yes, ma'am." "Did Mrs. Watkins refuse to give a statement?" The room focused on him all at once, and Marcus saw the young officer shrink under the weight of it. Price's eyes flickered toward Keller. Keller did not speak, but his stare carried a warning. That was how pressure worked in systems that forgot their purpose. It did not always arrive as a threat. Sometimes it arrived as a look across a conference table, a reminder of who signed evaluations, who recommended transfers, who could make the next 10 years of your career feel like a hallway with no doors. Price opened his mouth, closed it, then said, "I did not personally see her refuse." Brooks leaned forward. "That was not my question." Price's face reddened. "No, ma'am. She wrote something down. Keller cut in. She wrote after the fact, when emotions were high. Brooks lifted one finger. Lieutenant. One word. Enough. Keller stopped, but anger moved behind his eyes like a storm behind closed blinds. Marcus watched Price, and for a moment he did not see a coward. He saw a young man standing at the line between comfort and character, discovering that the line was thinner than he had hoped. Marcus knew that line. Every officer did. The job gave people authority, but it also gave them daily chances to hide from responsibility. The uniform could not make that choice for them. Brooks turned back to Marcus. Sergeant Reed, you said earlier that the reflection was a door. Where does it lead? The room waited. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and took out the USB drive. It looked ordinary, almost disappointingly small for the silence it created. Black plastic, silver connector. No label except a strip of white tape with one handwritten word. Watkins. Keller stared at it, and something in his face changed. Not guilt exactly. Recognition. Marcus placed the drive on the table, but did not slide it forward yet. Across the street from the stop is Watkins Pharmacy, he said. It has an exterior security camera under the front awning. It records the sidewalk, the curb, and part of the driver's side of any vehicle stopped in that exact spot. Nina sat up straighter. Brooks did not blink. Keller's voice came low. You obtained private surveillance without notifying command. Marcus turned to him. I filed a preservation request that night. Mrs. Watkins's son owns the pharmacy. He provided a copy voluntarily yesterday morning with a signed release. Keller's jaw flexed. Convenient. Marcus nodded once. Very. Then he slid the drive toward Nina. Because unlike the body camera, this footage did not answer to you. Nina Patel accepted the USB drive as if it were evidence in a courtroom. Careful, deliberate, with none of the casual motions she had used earlier. She inserted it into the secure media laptop, and for a few seconds the only sound in the room was the soft hum of the projector and the rain tapping against the window. Lieutenant Keller stood motionless near the screen, his arms now folded across his chest, but the posture no longer looked confident. It looked defensive. Captain Brooks leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the file loading bar. Officer Daniel Price stared at the table, breathing shallowly, as though the truth had become a person standing directly behind him. When the video opened, the angle was wider than the body camera, cleaner in the way only distance can be. The footage showed the front of Watkins Pharmacy, the sidewalk, the curb, the slick black road, and Mrs. Watkins's Camry pulled neatly beneath a streetlight. There was no dramatic music, no raised voices at first, just rain, traffic in the distance, and a woman sitting quietly in her car while 3 officers stood around her life like they had the right to decide how much dignity she was allowed to keep. Nina adjusted the volume. The audio was faint, captured from the pharmacy's outdoor microphone, but it was clear enough. Keller's voice came first. Step out of the vehicle. Mrs. Watkins answered. Officer, I have given you everything you asked for. Am I being detained? Marcus closed his eyes for one breath. He remembered that question. He remembered how brave it sounded and how tired. Keller moved closer to the window. You can make this easy, or you can make it difficult. On the screen, Marcus stepped into frame, his hands visible, his posture calm. Lieutenant, the vehicle is cleared. The plate is cleared. Her identification is valid. Keller turned halfway toward him. I told you to stand back. Marcus did not move forward. He did not challenge him in a way that could be twisted later. He simply said, we need to follow the facts. The next words from Keller changed the room. They did not explode. They slipped out with the casual poison of a thought too familiar to feel accidental. You people always protect each other. Nobody moved. Not Brooks. Not Nina. Not Price. Not the officers along the wall who had spent the morning trying to look neutral. The sentence filled the room completely, reaching every corner, every badge, every silent mouth. Marcus kept his eyes on the screen. He had heard the words in real time 3 nights earlier, but hearing them now, played back in front of people who could no longer pretend context would save them, felt different. It felt like opening a window in a room that had been stale for years. Keller spoke quickly. That is taken out of context. Nina did not stop the video. Brooks did not let him explain. The footage continued, and that was the cruelest mercy Keller could have been given, because truth does not argue. It keeps playing. On screen, Mrs. Watkins lowered her voice. I am a nurse. I am coming home from work. Please tell me what I did wrong. Keller answered, That attitude is exactly the problem. Marcus turned toward him again. Lieutenant, she has not raised her voice. Then came the part the body camera had lost. Keller reached to his chest and pressed the camera off. The pharmacy camera caught the motion clearly from the side. It also caught the red recording light disappearing. The room watched the missing 47 seconds return from the dark. In those seconds, Keller instructed Price to write that Mrs. Watkins had been non-compliant. He told Marcus to stop making him look bad. He said the report would reflect a failure to follow command if Marcus kept questioning him. He did not sound confused. He did not sound pressured by weather, traffic, or danger. He sounded certain that the story would belong to whoever wrote it first. Price lowered his head, his face tightening with shame. Brooks slowly turned from the screen to Keller. Lieutenant, she said, her voice controlled. Did you knowingly submit a report that contradicted this footage? Keller looked around the room, searching for the old exits, the old loyalties, the old silence. But the silence had changed sides. Marcus finally took Mrs. Watkins's handwritten statement from the folder and placed it beside the laptop. She told the truth that night, he said. The footage only proved who refused to hear it. Captain Brooks did not ask Keller the question twice. She did not need to. The footage was still frozen on the screen, holding him in a truth he could no longer outrank, outrun, or rewrite. The room that had once belonged to his voice now belonged to the evidence. Keller opened his mouth, but nothing useful came out. Captain, this is being misread, he said at last. A short clip cannot capture the pressure of a live scene. Marcus watched him carefully. There it was again, the old escape route. Pressure, stress, split-second judgment. Words that could be real in honest hands, but dangerous in the hands of someone using them to cover what he had already decided before the facts arrived. Brooks turned to Nina. Make a secure copy of that file immediately. Preserve the original drive. Document chain of custody, starting now. Nina nodded and began typing, her face composed, though her hands moved with the precision of someone who understood that a small mistake could give a lie somewhere to hide. Brooks looked toward the two sergeants seated near the door. No one leaves with notes, recordings, or personal copies from this meeting. All materials related to this stop are now held pending internal investigation. The words settled over the room like a door locking. Keller's face tightened. You are treating me like a suspect. Brooks looked at him then, fully, without the softness she had tried to keep earlier. I am treating this department like it still has standards. That was when Officer Daniel Price stood. Not quickly, not bravely at first. Slowly, like a man rising under the weight of every minute he had. Stayed seated. His chair legs made a low sound against the carpet, and everyone turned toward him. Keller's eyes flashed. Sit down, Price. Price looked at him, and Marcus saw the final thread snap. Fear did not vanish from the young officer's face, but something larger stepped in front of it. No, sir, Price said, his voice unsteady but clear. I need to correct my supplemental report. Keller went pale. Brooks gave Price one nod. Go ahead. Price swallowed hard. Mrs. Watkins was cooperative. Sergeant Reed did not interfere. He asked for verification. He asked us to slow down. Lieutenant Keller told me afterward that the report needed to show the stop escalated because of her behavior and because Sergeant Reed undermined command. The room was silent except for Nina's keyboard. Price kept going, because once truth begins moving, it becomes harder to stop than a lie. I signed because I was afraid. That is not an excuse. It is just the truth. Marcus looked at him, not with triumph, not with judgment, but with the tired recognition of a man who knew confession did not erase harm, but it could become the first brick in rebuilding what harm had broken. Keller pointed at Price. You are trying to save yourself. Price's eyes lowered for a second, then rose again. Maybe I am. But Mrs. Watkins should not have needed a pharmacy camera to be believed. That sentence struck deeper than anyone expected. Captain Brooks closed the folder in front of her. Lieutenant Keller, effective immediately, you are relieved of supervisory duties pending review by Internal Affairs. Your access to case files, body camera administration, and report approval systems is suspended until further notice. Keller stared at her as if the words were impossible in a room where he had always been possible. You are making a mistake. Brooks stood. The mistake was made on Jefferson Street. This is the part where we stop protecting it. For the first time, Keller looked at Marcus not with contempt, but with something closer to disbelief. As if he could not understand how the man he had tried to humiliate had never raised his voice and still changed the entire room. Marcus gathered the papers. Slowly. He did not smile. Justice did not feel like celebration. Not when Mrs. Watkins had still driven home that night with shaking hands. Not when Price had nearly buried the truth to protect his future. Not when a room full of trained officers had needed a video to remind them that dignity should never depend on proof. He looked at Keller once, then at the frozen image of the rainy street. Accountability is not revenge, Marcus said quietly. It is what keeps the next person from standing alone. The next morning, Mrs. Gloria Watkins walked into the East Precinct wearing the same hospital badge Marcus had seen hanging from her mirror, but this time it rested against a navy cardigan instead of damp blue scrubs. She moved slowly, not because she was weak, but because some rooms make people measure every step before trusting the floor beneath them. Captain Brooks met her in the lobby, not behind a desk, not through a clerk, but face to face, with her hands visible and her voice lowered by respect. Marcus stood a few feet away, close enough to support her, far enough not to turn her apology into his moment. Officer Price was there too, pale and quiet, holding a written correction to his report with both hands. When Brooks said the department owed her an apology, Mrs. Watkins did not smile. She listened. She had the stillness of someone who had accepted too many apologies that arrived only after evidence forced the door open. "I appreciate the words," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "But I would rather see what changes." That was the sentence that stayed with Marcus longer than anything Keller had said. Not anger, not bitterness. A boundary, a lesson. Because dignity does not ask for sympathy first. It asks for repair. By noon, Internal Affairs had taken custody of the video files. Keller's access had been frozen, and every case review he had supervised in the last 18 months was flagged for audit. Brooks issued a new order before the end of the day. Any body camera gap longer than 5 seconds would require independent technical review. Any civilian statement submitted on scene had to be scanned into the case packet, and any officer who raised a documented concern during a review could not be disciplined or reassigned without written approval from command. It was not everything. It did not heal the past, but it was a beginning with teeth. Marcus read the memo twice in his parked cruiser as the afternoon sun broke through the clouds over Jefferson Street. Across from him, Watkins Pharmacy had reopened. A small bell above the door rang as customers came and went. Life continued in its ordinary, stubborn way. People bought cough drops, greeting cards, diapers, aspirin, and coffee from the machine near the counter. The same sidewalk that had witnessed humiliation now carried neighbors who knew nothing about the review room, the USB drive, or the 47 seconds that almost disappeared. Marcus watched Mrs. Watkins through the window as she spoke with her son near the register. She looked tired, but not defeated. That mattered. Sometimes justice was not a grand speech or a dramatic ending. Sometimes justice was a woman returning to her own neighborhood without having to lower her eyes. Later that evening, Price found Marcus in the parking lot. For a moment, he only stood there, hands in his jacket pockets, staring at the painted lines between them. "I should have said something that night," Price said. Marcus looked at him, then at the precinct building behind them, its windows glowing white against the darkening sky. "Yes," he said. Price nodded, accepting the answer because it was not softened. "I am sorry." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Be sorry enough to be different next time." Price's eyes lifted. There was no absolution in Marcus's voice, but there was a path. That was more useful. A week later, during the next training session, Marcus stood in front of 30 new officers and played no video. He showed no headline. He told them about procedure, evidence, and the weight of a report written under oath. Then he paused and said, "The badge gives you authority, but it does not give you ownership over another person's dignity. The moment you forget that, the camera is not your enemy." The truth is, in the back of the room, Captain Brooks listened without interrupting. Outside, rain began again. Soft against the windows, the same sound as that night, but it no longer felt like something trying to wash away evidence. It felt like something clearing the air. Keller had thought silence would protect him. He had thought the room would choose rank over truth, habit over courage, comfort over conscience. But that day, a camera did what the room had refused to do. It remembered. And once the truth began to play, everyone had to decide whether they were wearing the badge to protect power or to protect people.